when you are overextending yourself and you're just giving and giving and giving and giving and being this servant and servant and serving and all the things, resentment can creep up really fast. With Kevin Hart, he was making a joke, and he said, I would give a person $1 million if you could find a woman who can actually cook, clean, and work out and have a great job and do it successfully. And he said, you can't find it. You will never be able to find it. It's funny because no one ever asks me what I'm not doing. Don't tell me I can't be mad. No, you need to be mad. Like, be mad, but also with those emotions, do something about it. Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. It is Brandy Mabra here, and we are talking about servant leadership gone wrong. So servant leadership, it sounds so good. Servant leadership, if you don't know exactly what it is, or maybe you haven't heard of the term, servant leadership is based on biblical principles when it comes to how you show up. In essence, in the shortest form, it's where you are coming from a place of service for how you lead your team, which means that you're there to be a resource. You are there to show that I'm not better than you. I'm with you. I'm partnering with you. And sometimes what happens is people take that to the wrong extent, end up burning themselves out. I am a story of that because my natural leadership style is actually a servant leadership style. I love coming up a place of service, but it can go wrong and it can make you tired. So one of the things that really inspired this episode is I'm a huge fan of Emma Grede, and I just love the work that she does. I think that she is just a powerhouse when it comes to how she shows up as a CEO and all the different things that she's done. And so people will ask her consistently, what has she done to been able to get to the level of success that she's gotten to? And she always says, it's funny because no one ever asks me what I'm not doing. And I resonate with that so much. One of the positions I was hired to do was after a post-acquisition. And we had just transitioned to where private equity had came in, bought up all these practices. And so my job was to grow the rest of the practices and grow the portfolio to help with that transition in order to continue to add more practices to the portfolio from an operations standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. When I took on that job, I was super excited because it was a great experience. It's definitely something. So when people are wanting to sell practices or getting their practices ready to be purchased, or even what goes into that conversation, I'm very knowledgeable for that. The other piece of that is, what does it look like on the other side after the practice has been acquired? I can also speak to that because I've been on both sides. When I got the position, though, one of the things that I recognized was everything that I was taking on as a woman, as a mom, as a partner, like all of the stuff. And I started to recognize I couldn't do all of it. And there's another person who talked about this, like me and my significant other, we went to go see Kevin Hart. I'm a big fan of Kevin Hart too. So with Kevin Hart, he was making a joke, and he said, I would give a person $1 million if you could find a woman who can actually cook, clean, and work out and have a great job and do it successfully. And he said, you can't find it. You will never be able to find it. And I believe in that because at the end of the day, we are not capable as people to do that without help. And that's the only way that we'll be able to do it. So to go back to my private equity story, I had to make a choice. I remember when I first got the job, I was like, I don't want my family to suffer. I want to make sure that they're good. I want to make sure that they're taken care of. And so every Sunday, I was trying to prepare meals. I was trying to make sure the house was clean. I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was getting off work like super late. I was traveling because we were building and growing practices. After just all of the hours and all of the wait, I remember the moment where my significant other, he called me and he said, hey, can you pick up dinner for the boys? And I was on my way home. And I was like, you know what, you motherfucker. I was like, I'm going back. I almost cussed. Like, I was so mad because I was like, what in the world? What do you mean? Like, I just spent all of Sunday. There was leftover spaghetti in the refrigerator. And that was meant for them to eat on. And they didn't want to eat that. They wanted me to stop and get like McDonald's. And I was mad at that. And so since that point in time, honestly, I stopped cooking because what was I doing? I was killing myself in the process. And I think a lot of women do that, especially ambitious women. And I had to come to the conclusion of what am I good at? I'm an amazing leader. I know that. I'm a relationship builder. I have an administrative gift. And I'm saying that not to brag, but also people have reconfirmed that to me multiple times. But also, I'm really great at making money and I'm good at building a career for myself. And I had to come to the terms of that was my role. So I'm being a servant leader to my family. I'm being a servant leader to my team by not killing myself, trying to be the whole woman or taking on this whole patriarchy of a role of what it looks like to be a woman, to cook, clean, and look great and do all the things, right? And make money. And I'm a breadwinner. So at this point in time, fast forward, I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't do my man's laundry, I don't do my kids' laundry. No, I don't. I don't do it. And at the end of the day, what I have done is I've outsourced really well for myself. So I have someone, I love her to death. She helps me clean my home. Thank you, Jesus. Also, with laundry, my man does his own laundry. He does. He does his own laundry. He folds his own laundry. I taught my son how to do his own laundry. I've taught my son how to cook. And then we've outsourced cooking, so we have a chef that we've worked with in the past, Reggie. You need to look him up. I'll put his information in the show notes because he's amazing. But like at the end of the day, it's about setting yourself up for success. And so it's not just where, my family's on their own. No, like I took the control of my time and I took control of how I perceived myself. And I took control over the fact that I didn't want to be people pleasing at work and people pleasing at home. So what I realized, like the mindset shift that I had is that I couldn't give 100% at work and 100% at home and be able to carry everything that I was carrying. And I decided to prioritize making money and being able to feed my family and to be able to put food on the table compared to killing myself trying to be the one to cook the food. So I paid somebody to cook the food so that way I didn't have to worry about it. And I paid someone to clean the house so I didn't have to worry about it. And I delegated to my family the laundry so I didn't have to worry about it. And so what that did was that freed up so much time for me so I could actually spend time with them because I was, being pulled in so many different directions. It also allowed for me to not be mad and resentful. I think a lot of times when it comes down to how we're showing up at home or even in the business, like we're mad, we're resentful because we feel like we're getting the short end of the stick. And that's how I was feeling. When we think about now the same thing from a business perspective, what's happening inside the practice, when you are overextending yourself and you're just giving and giving and giving and giving and being this servant and serving and all the things, resentment can creep up really fast. Not saying that the emotions that you're feeling are entitled 110%. So if you're sitting there listening to this and you're like, man, I'm mad. Don't tell me I can't be mad. No, you need to be mad. Like be mad, but also with those emotions, do something about it. Right? Because at the end of the day, the team needs for you to recognize that you can't give 100% and overextend yourself and still be able to make the amount of money that you need to make to keep food on your team's tables and to also keep food on your table as well. Right? So it's important for you to recognize where's your capacity, where's your time? What's your desire? Because the flip side, there might be some people who are listening to this. I love to cook. I want to cook for my family. This isn't about what's right or wrong. It's about just recognizing what's going to bring you joy. And what does not bring me joy is I don't like to cook. I like to cook once a year, and that is during the holidays. And that gives me joy. And even with that, I make a pound cake that I cook and I burn every year. So at the end of the day, people have what they're great at. What this conversation is for you to identify where you're overextending yourself at, right? So I just love what Emma Green said. Like, the question is, what am I not doing? And for you to be okay with what you're not doing. There was a lot of guilt that I felt in the beginning, and even working with my team, when I started to pull myself out because I needed to, and when I started to give the resources that they needed to be successful. And I felt bad about that. I felt, extremely guilty about that. And I've talked about that before. I'm not going to go into that now. But at the end of the day, the guilt that can come up, especially when your leadership style is a servant leadership style, you have to become okay with identifying the fact that you're serving in a different way. Servant leadership and people pleasing are different, very different. And a lot of times people think they're the same thing, and they are not. They are not. The other piece of this is, decision fatigue is real. And there's a whole episode that I talked about delegation. There's a whole episode that I've talked about where making decisions in decision fatigue. And so there's a whole tool called the decision tree matrix that we give our clients. So I'll refer you back to that episode. But one of the things too with being free, with not having to worry about so many things at home, then it was less decisions that I had to make, right? And so when we think about the team inside the business, the less decisions that you have to make, the more free that your mind is, right? To be creative, to think about the vision, to where's the practice going. When you are inundated with decisions, mommy, what are we going to eat? What are we doing this weekend? What are the plans for this? What are the plans for that? And then you go over to the business side and it's the same thing. It's just different questions. What do you want to do for this? Or what do you want to do with this patient? Or what do you want to do with this client? Or what do you want to do with this team member? Or, so much stuff. And that is a really hard seat to be in. So free yourself, free yourself. If you can train up your team to make decisions for you, if you can train up your family to make decisions for you, then that is definitely freeing. For me, one of the things, because I know what I'm saying is like, yeah, I don't cook, I don't clean, and I make money, and I have this great career, and now I'm a CEO, like all the things. It sounds really great. But what do you do, when you do feel guilt? I'll tell you exactly what I did. I had to come to the conclusion of I needed to not feel guilty, but I also had to surround myself with people so that way I could see in real time that there's other women who don't cook and they don't clean and they delegate and they hire people and they outsource. And that way I didn't feel the same guilt. So I put myself in masterminds. I put myself around other entrepreneurs. I put myself around other ambitious women who maybe they're not entrepreneurs, but they have really high level careers and they're busy. And I put myself in a place where I did not see the mom, I'll be honest, the mom who was doing all the stuff, who was cooking and cleaning and being so domestic, this domesticated goddess. I did not put myself in those circles because I would feel guilty. I would feel bad because that's not me. I put myself around people intentionally who showed me that it was okay and also showed me how to do it in a way that was feasible for me and my family. And was feasible for me and my business, right? And so that's part of even inside of Private Practice CEO. And so even inside of Private Practice CEO, it's amazing to watch because we're not saying, go cook, go clean, and go run a business and go do. No, the conversation is, who else can do that for you? Do you have to do that? If you don't want to do that, and again, if there are some things that you want to do, okay, why are you doing it? Are you doing it out of guilt? Are you doing it because you feel like you should do that? Or are you doing it because you really, truly want to do it? And so I think it's a real conversation, but you have to put yourself in community. You have to, right? And so over the years, fast forward, I don't think I would be able to say what I'm saying now and be okay with it if I didn't have community around me. Even my podcast manager who is right here is, hyping me up. And so at the end of the day, put yourself around people who understand it, who respect it, don't make you feel bad about it. And I think that that's powerful. To be honest, even as I'm recording this and I'm being very open and honest with you, there are still some emotions that I'm kind of like, oh, well, how are people going to view me and how's this going to come across? But again, it's a journey. And again, I've surrounded myself with people who can validate me and not make me feel guilty and help me as long as who can help me know that it's okay, that it's okay. I can't do all the things, nor do I want to do all the things. That's just me. So if you were in a place where you were like, man, I really would love to free up my time on my calendar. I know that there's a better way for me to show up in my life and also inside my practice, then Private Practice CEO is definitely there for you. I also want to tell you that we have a masterclass that's also coming up. It's the Own Your CEO Status Masterclass, but it's more specifically about how to go from 500K to 5 million with the new leadership model. And so when we think about leadership and when we think about the servant leader, then you can still be a really great boss and a really great CEO and make a lot of great money. So at the end of the day, I would love for you to join me either by applying for Private Practice CEO, or you can also register for the masterclass that's coming up next. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.